Before Ali al-Marri was arrested by the U.S. government, he lived a pretty normal life according to his family. His home was in Qatar, a tiny country that borders Saudi Arabia. Surrounded by the sea, Qatar based its economy on pearl diving and fishing for centuries. That's because there is nothing but desert between the coastlines. Then in 1939, oil was discovered, and eventually this tiny country became one of the richest in the world. In 1971, Qatar gained independence from Great Britain and went on to become one of the United States' strongest Mideast allies. In fact, the war in Iraq is partly staged out of an airbase located in the Qatari desert. Like his brothers, Ali grew up fascinated by the United States and would eventually follow in his brother Najee's footsteps and attend Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois.
You loved America.
Yes, I did.
You were a fan of America. You thought it was a great place.
I did.
And you encouraged Ali to go to America.
Yes, I did. I really called him. And by the way, even until now, I encourage my nephew to go to America, even almost 6 months ago.
When he lived in Qatar, Ali worked as a successful businessman in the booming city of Doha, where the skyline continues to change almost every day.
What type of work did he do?
Actually, the last work he's been doing is he's working in a bank. He was, he's a key person in the bank. He's really his banker.
How was he thought of in the bank? Did people like him? They didn't trust him, or?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yes. Many people, they like him. They like Ali. They appreciate his help to them.
But on December 12, 2001, the government closed in on this family man they believe was living a double life. They arrested him like hundreds of other Arabs around the U.S. At first, his family thought it was just a routine process to ensure the safety of Americans and that Ali would soon be released.
Because I know he has a big beard. I know he's very, very strong Muslims. So that time, we believe that if anybody is a Muslim, he will talk to him. So I thought maybe just an investigation and they will let him go.
But Ali wasn't let go. In fact, when lawyers moved to have the initial charges dismissed, the government countered by declaring Ali an enemy combatant. This meant Ali would in effect become a prisoner of war and could be held indefinitely. In fact, he's still being held in isolation at the Navy brig near Charleston.
That's the basic issue, is who has custody over you, to whom do you belong? In the enemy combatants, the argument of the White House and thus far, and the administration is, if you are an enemy combatant, properly understood, you're more like a prisoner of war, you belong to the Department of Defense. If you're a citizen, you commit a crime, you're in jail, you've committed a criminal offense, you belong to the Department of Justice, and you move through that part of the system. That's basically what's going on here.
In September of 2004, almost 3 years after his arrest, his lawyers were finally able to see a document outlining why he had been arrested. The allegations are shocking. According to the government, Ali was part of an al-Qaeda sleeper cell that would continue to harm Americans after the 9/11 attack. The allegations say he met personally with Osama bin Laden in the summer of 2001, and that he volunteered to be a martyr.
Let me say this, I'm glad he's where he is. I'm glad he's not in an ordinary kind of penal institution, because I don't think he's an ordinary run-of-the-mill criminal. I think to the extent that the Department of Defense and DOJ have indicated and have evidence that he is in league with America's enemies and with those who are openly at war with the United States, he's not just he's not Bonnie or Clyde. That's the whole point. He is something very different. He's more like Osama bin Laden. And to the extent that he is, I think he should be treated differently.
He allegedly went to an al-Qaeda training camp in Afghanistan for more than a year in the mid-90s. And he learned about chemical terrorism. The government says he rushed to get into the U.S. before the 9/11 attack, arriving on September 10th. They claim he exchanged emails and phone calls with 2 other top al-Qaeda officials, including the notorious KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Part of Ali's alleged mission was to disrupt the U.S. banking system, and government officials say they found proof he was operating a stolen credit card scam in Illinois near where he was going to college. But are the allegations legitimate? 7 years later, his lawyers still haven't been given the chance to test the merits of the allegations in court. According to his lawyers, the accusations against Ali were based on multiple levels of hearsay, including statements from secret, unnamed sources and statements obtained through the use of torture. The kinds of statements that have been thrown out of court in similar cases, including one just last month. Former federal prosecutor Miller Shealy worked on Ali's case for the government.
Ali, you've seen what you're able to talk about.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, do you believe that there was information that was gained through the use of torture that perhaps is going to hurt?
I wouldn't comment on that one way or the other, and I don't believe I can.
Ali's inability to face the charges is something his family can't believe is happening in America.
The people who live in this region, in the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, all of the Gulf states, how did you view American justice?
You know, we believe in American justice. They are really good justice. There is a really good justice in America before 9/11.
But the government says before he came to America that he associated with al-Qaeda. Did you ever see him? You saw him on a regular basis every couple of days. Did you ever see him with people you were concerned about?
No. And my brother, if he's been accused by terrorism, we need to have an proof. We need to have something that's been specific, what they charge him with. We need them to charge Ali with something else, with something so we can bring him to the court, to justice, and American justice.
And the push to let Ali have his day in court is picking up momentum. Last year, a 3-judge appeals court panel ruled that the president did not have the authority to hold Ali indefinitely without bringing charges. But in July, that decision was overturned in a 5-4 vote by the full federal appeals court. Now the question is before the U.S. Supreme Court. On November 25th, the New York Times wrote in an editorial, quote, "The stakes in this case go well beyond Mr. al-Marri because it applies equally to American citizens. If the ruling stands, presidents would be able to throw out due process, habeas corpus, and other constitutional rights for anyone they declare to have terrorist ties, an intolerable reading of the law and one that the Supreme Court should quickly reverse."
If you look at the polls that are taken before a terrorist attack and after one, if we have, God forbid, and I hope we don't, another disaster like we had on 9/11, I think people's attitudes will switch back. They will do, and they will want the government to do what it needs to do to stop innocent American lives from being taken. We just cannot afford another disaster like 9/11.
We're out here in the Saudi Arabian desert, some 25 miles from Al-Hufuf. This is where the al-Marri family gathers for their retreats, where they enjoy the breezes of the desert. They look up to the sky and they pray that the American justice system will be fair to Ali.
Would the family be satisfied? Would people in the Gulf region be satisfied if the American government charged him and they brought him before a jury and he was convicted and he was placed in a death sentence or he was placed in jail for the rest of his life? Are you willing as a family to accept that?
Yes, we will.
But you don't think he did anything wrong?
No.
When our Savage Report investigation continues, torture in Charleston, and attempts to get to the truth, was Ali tortured at the Charleston brig?
You thought that the American government had killed your brother?
Yes.
You're watching the American justice system in the time of war, a tale of two brothers. Stay with us.